Guys, good morning. All right. So we are having one use case for which we wanted to create a trigger. And the use case is like there are few of the fields, account object, which has to become mandatory, but this is to be done from the programming. So there are few fields inside account object like industry, facts, or website. It could be any field, it could be of any object. Right. This is more, see, important here is to understand the logic and not, not exactly on which object we are applying. So right now, if I'm taking this example against account object for these fields, this can also be implemented. This can also be replicated for some other object for some other fields as well. Right. Important here is to understand how you can make a field as a mandatory field while inserting a record or while updating a record inside an object. How can you make a field as mandatory by writing a trigger? Because we already know that there are other ways as well by which you can make the field as required. But if in certain circumstances, if for example, this has to be done, if this has to be done with the programs only, this has to be done with the triggers. So how could we write down that? So basically our discussion is that one. All right. Okay. So yesterday we created this trigger, or maybe day before yesterday, I guess in the last session, I have created this trigger and but I have not written any business logic inside because I wanted to elaborate this whole coding. So that was the reason I kept it blank for that day. Now now let's continue with this one. So we are writing a trigger on account object, right? We are writing a trigger on the account object, and as you can see the the format itself is like the keyword is trigger, name of the trigger on again is a keyword, and then the name of the object. Then the event which I have decided is I wanted this trigger to be get applied before insert, before inserting a new record inside the object. I wanted this trigger should be get applied. Even also I wanted this to be get applied when if we are trying to update some existing record. So whether it's an insert operation or it's a edit operation, update operation. So if you are trying to insert a new record, or else if you are trying to update some of the existing record. So we wanted that this trigger should be get applied in both of the cases. That means when you are inserting a new record, that time also these fields should become required field, and this should also become required even when if you are trying to update some of the existing record. Right. So this is what is the discussion which is going on right now. So let me write. So I would first of all, I first of all bifurcate that there are two events over here. So I'm going to, my business logic, I'm going to divide this into two separate blocks. One block for before insert, the another block I would be designing for before update. And later on, we will see, once that both of the block has been coded, we're going to see, is there any way that we could customize this? Is there, sorry, not customize, is there is any way that we could optimize the code? Right. First of all, we will going to write down a simple but a lengthy code. First of all, what the code which I'm going to write would be a simple code, but that would be a lengthy code. And later on, once that, both of the block for before insert and block for before update. Once that is completed, I'm going to show you like how we can how we can optimize the code, how we can reduce the number of the length of the codes. And it is very important to learn, right? Because we should always write down uh, the optimized code as far as possible. Okay, so I would first of all would check for the event. Like, I'm going to create, all right, I'm going to write down the business logic for before insert, right? This is a before insert block. So how I'm going to identify that this operation is before insert operation. For that, I'm going to make a use of trigger context variable. So you would going to understand this gradually, but you would going to understand this. All right. So I'm writing one if condition over here, and within this if condition, with the help of, say, with the help of trigger context variable, I'm going to identify this business logic should get only applied for before insert. So how exactly I can do that? I'm going to make a use of the trigger context variables. So if you want it, I can just show you it once again. So what are the trigger context variable? Trigger context variables are like trigger dot is insert, trigger dot is update, trigger dot is delete, is undelete, is before, is after, is executing size and on type. This usually be skipped, right? We're not going to see any use case related to this because they are very rare and they are very rarely used in some of very specialized kind of very complicated type of business logic, which mostly we don't require to put that one. But yes, they are there, and that is why we have it. So these are some of the normal context variable which we would be repeatedly using. So these are like is insert, is update, is delete, is before, and is after. And when I was explaining this to you, right, I told that this is like a question. This is just like a question. You are asking trigger, is this is an insert operation? Is this is an update operation? And see the return type is Boolean. What does it mean? When you ask this question to trigger, it is an insert operation. Trigger, is this is an update operation, is this is a delete or undelete operation, is are you applying this before insert, I mean in the before logic, are you applying this after after the commitment of data, or you are applying it before commitment of data? And it can answer you Boolean, like means true or false, depending on that. Depending on that, we built up our logic. So this is trigger context variable. You can assume this, you can visualize this, you can think like this is just a question which I would going to ask to trigger, and that's why it is trigger. Dot is insert, and it would going to either reply me true or false, yes or I mean true or false, yes or no, right? So something like this. So I would ask a question over here, trigger dot is insert, trigger dot is insert. Are you going to perform? I mean, this is I'm building up a logic before insert, right? So first, what thing I have checked is trigger dot is insert, or I'll have to check one more before that, right? Before that, trigger trigger dot is before and trigger dot is insert. So in my if condition, see in my if condition, I have written two things. There are two conditions which I have mentioned. That means whenever, if you are coming inside in this block, if you are coming inside in this block within the body of if condition, if you are coming inside in this block, this is what? This is block of if, right? This is block. And when you are supposed to come over here, when the condition you mention inside the if statement is true. Otherwise, you would not come inside in this block. And what is that condition which I have given? Trigger dot is before. I mean, see, we have created the event. We have created the event as what? We have created the event as before insert. Right now, just concentrate on before insert. So this has to be applied before. This has to be first of all applied before, not after. And what before? Before insert. So I'll have to check for both of them. I'll have to ask two questions to this trigger. Trigger, as are you a before trigger? Trigger, are you a before trigger? Prerna, could you please off your video? Prerna. So trigger, are you a before trigger? And second question would be like, are you performing, I mean, are you going to check, are you going to apply it for the insert operation? So that is the reason. So when this is before insert, you have to split it into like this. Trigger dot is before and trigger dot is insert. Similarly, see, when I would be making the second logic, right? When I would be making the second logic, when I would be making the second logic, right? The business logic for before update, right? So that time I'm going to write down like if trigger dot is before first thing, and second trigger dot is update. So So the update part, the before update part would be I'm going to check for this. I'm going to check with this condition, and thereby I'm going to light the business logic over here. For before insert, I'm going to check with this condition is trigger dot is before and trigger dot is insert. And for that, I'm going to write down my conditions, my business logic over here. All right. I hope this makes sense to every one of you. Now, let's move further. So what I have, this block is going to be applied for before, and before what? Before insert. Whereas this block is going to be applied for before, and before what? Before update. All right. Let's now talk about the business logic. So what you wanted to check, what you wanted to see. I have a few of the fields inside account object. Whenever if someone is trying to insert a record, right? I have shown you that diagram in the past as well. Let's again open the same. Listen. So see, I told you one thing, like, if, for example, if this is one of the record that is trying to be get inserted, this is one of the record which is trying to get inserted inside the account object. But we have created a trigger for, we have created a trigger. And how does trigger actually acts to be? Trigger acts like a security person, a security guard. And it is going to validate whether this record have all those entities, have all those values of all those fields, which we have marked as a mandatory one. So if this record is trying to get inserted inside the object, it must have it must have the values of all those mandatory fields. So how trigger is going to see for this? So for that purpose, this record and every such record, either which is trying to get inserted or either which is trying to be get updated, they first of all goes to trigger.new as well as to trigger.new map. We're going to specifically talk about new. What is trigger.new? It's internally a list collection. What is trigger.new map? It's internally a map collection. It's internally a map collection. All right. So trigger.new. So this record ultimately goes to trigger.new. So whatever the business logic that you have to create, that trigger is going to be applied. It's not going to apply over this place, right? It's rather it's going to be applied on trigger dot. So what trigger used to do it something, this is pretty simple to understand. If you would take this example, I told you that let's consider, you must have seen that. Whenever you go to shopping mall for women's, there is a separate frisking box, isn't it? आदमी की तो खैर कोई इज्जत ही नहीं होती, उसको तो डायरेक्टली दरवाजे से स्कैन कर लेता है वो. बट फॉर वुमेन्स they put up certain respect, right? They take them to that particular box only, and there, like, they perform their security activities, whatever they wanted to check their bags and whatever. So they, whatever the activity they do it in that particular restricted area. So that frisking performs, this frisking for women also is always going to perform in that area. In the same way, if trigger wanted to apply any business logic, if trigger wanted to validate for certain things, it can only do it in its own area. And what is that area? Trigger.new. So you don't have to think about like how does this data is going to be get transferred inside trigger.new. That's an automated. That is the logic which is working behind, and you merely don't have to worry about that. It is going to be happen automatically every time. So if you are trying to insert a new record, or else if you are trying to update a record, that record automatically is transferred to trigger.new and new. So from there onward, the business logic, what you are designing, the business logic which I am designing right now, I'm designing something over, I'm going to write a code over here. I'll have to take this into consideration that my data, this data, which I wanted to perform the validation is being already present inside trigger.new or new. So you always have to think from here. You don't have to worry about how this data is getting transferred to trigger.new. Is it available or not? No, it's this everything. This backend complexity is hidden to you. I have so many times, I have told this that Apex is a high level program. Whatever we are doing in Apex, it's a high level update. That means the entire backend part, the entire complicated backend part has already been handled inside in the metadata, and you simply don't have to worry about. You just have to learn the upper level, right? What is an Apex? It's an upper level object oriented, and it does not deal anything related to procedure. All right. Anyways, first thing was to check. First thing was to create a block of business logic that is going to be applied before insert. I similarly a block of business logic which is going to be applied for before update. So since we are having two separate events, I have created two separate blocks. One for this event before insert, the another one for before update. I'm just trying to keep it simple. Later on, I'll going to merge this code in a single entity, and that would be the optimized in the final version. But right now, I'm just trying to keep it simple so that every one of you could understand this, right? Okay, let's proceed with this. So with the help of trigger context variable, by asking this question, we have formed these two separate blocks. Is trigger dot is before one question for this, and trigger dot is insert. Trigger dot is before and trigger dot is update. Then this block, right? This way. Now, now, now. See, let's assume you have to always assume this. You have to always assume this. What I'm going to what I'm going to tell you, right? Whenever you are writing a trigger, guys, listen this very carefully. Listen this very carefully. And this, you always have to keep this in your mind. You always have to keep this in your mind that whenever you are creating a trigger, whenever you are creating a trigger, you always have to assume that it is going to be get applied on bulk amount of records. It is going to be applied on bulk amount. Although in example, I'm taking just one, I'm just showing you one record. That does not mean it works on single record. I have told you the internal capacity of this particular storage area, trigger.new map, old map, is to store at least 200 records. But even you don't think like on it can only work on 200. No. If, for example, there are 200, 2000 records, it would going this validation, what trigger is checking for, it's going to be validated on all together. आप मुझे एक बात बताइए कि जैसे वो बॉक्स है तो चलो जहाँ पे फ्रिस्किंग होती है, चेकिंग होती है, वहां पे अगर 5 लोग खड़े, एग्जाम्पल है, तो क्या इसका मतलब ये होता है कि मॉल में आने वाले सिर्फ पहले 5 लोग चेक होंगे और बाकी लोगों को अलाउ कर दिया जाएगा? ऐसा नहीं होता ना। हाँ, क्या होगा फिर? 5-5 की बैचेस में चेकिंग होगी, isn't it? But everyone who is entering inside in that shopping mall has to be get secure, has to be clarified, has to be get clearance from the security personnel, isn't it? तो भले ही 200 रिकॉर्ड यहाँ इस मेमोरी के अंदर रह सकते हो, बट इसका मतलब ये नहीं होता है कि आप हमेशा 200 ही अज्यूम करके चले। आपकी जानकारी के लिए ये बात थी। अदरवाइज आप 2000 लाएं तो 20,000 लाएं, 2,20,000,000 कितने भी रिकॉर्ड्स हैं, ज्यादा रिकॉर्ड्स हैं, बैच प्रोग्राम बनाए, लेकिन वो सारा वैलिडेशन जो है उसमें आएगा। हाँ, बैच साइज वुड बी 200, so it can require certain time that may affect a little bit of efficiencies, a little bit, because this happens very quickly in milliseconds. This entire execution is getting covered, so even that is not is an issue. लेकिन आपकी जानकारी के लिए था कि ये 200 रिकॉर्ड एक एट अ टाइम यहाँ पे रह सकते हैं। चलो, सो वी ऑलवेज हैव टू कंसीडर, जैसे अभी मैं मान के चली कि फॉर एग्जांपल थोड़ी देर के लिए आप ये मान के चले कि ट्रिगर डॉट न्यू में ऐसे 10 रिकॉर्ड आए, लाइक वी आर ट्राइंग टू इंसर्ट 10 रिकॉर्ड्स, 10 रिकॉर्ड आए हुए। सो इफ दिस इज R1, तो यहाँ पर रहेगा आपका R10। देयर आर 10 रिकॉर्ड्स इनसाइड इन ट्रिगर डॉट। जस्ट फॉर नाउ, फॉर एन एग्जांपल, for an instance, just assume that there are 10 records. There are 10 records. All right. So I wanted to check all 10 of them, right? I wanted to check all 10 of them one by one. One by one, I'll have to check all 10 of them. That all these records must have those industry value and fax value and website value, right? All 10 of them. But I'll have to check it I'll have to check them one by one. All right, individual basis. So that is the reason I'm building up a for loop. One enhance for one enhance, one enhance for one enhance for. Now, see, this is the most interesting part of the story. People usually find a difficulty at this point. So this is very easy to understand. At the same time, this is the most important part of this whole story. From where what you are checking, I'm checking for every account record. I'm checking for every account record. I have created a local variable called ACC for this. But from where these records are coming? This for loop should take this record from where? So this is the most tricky and most important, and people find it more confusing. So I'm making it very simple. Where this whole record, you tell me one thing. If I'm telling you like there are 10 records, there were 10 records that we are trying to get inserted, but they cannot insert directly because there is a trigger standing in front of them. So what trigger would do? You cannot enter inside in this building directly. No, I'm not going to allow you that. What? Go to that security area. चलो सारे 10 के 10 जाओ पहले उधर जाओ. Go to that room. All 10 of you just go to that room. वहां जाइए. And we would going to validate you first. We're going to see कि तुम अपने साथ इंडस्ट्री का वैल्यू, फैक्स का और वेबसाइट का वैल्यू लाए हो या नहीं लाए. आप में से जितने लोगों के पास, ऑल 10 ऑफ यू लिसन दिस वेरी केयरफुली, तुम में से जितने भी रिकॉर्ड्स जिनके पास ये तीनों चीज होंगे, इंडस्ट्री, फैक्स और वेबसाइट, I'm going to allow that record only to enter inside in this shopping complex, inside in this object. Otherwise, मैं रोक दूँ. तो यहाँ ये जो records iterate हो रहे हैं one by one is getting iterated from where? From trigger dot. Right? So this is pretty simple to understand. I don't know how people would assume this and they find it very difficult कि यार इसको iterate कहाँ से करना है. It's very simple. They are getting iterated from trigger dot new only. They are getting iterated from trigger dot new. वैसे भी वो सारे रिकॉर्ड्स कहाँ पर हैं? वो सारे रिकॉर्ड ट्रिगर डॉट न्यू में है. वहां से एक एक रिकॉर्ड निकालना है, एसीसी में डालना है और एसीसी से फिर आगे हम लोग आगे में चेक करेंगे. नाउ वी आर गोइंग टू परफॉर्म दैट चेकिंग कि वेदर दैट रिकॉर्ड इज हैविंग द वैल्यू ऑफ इंडस्ट्री. ठीक है, तो वो तो अब सिंपल एपेक्स है अपना. इफ एसीसी डॉट इफ एसीसी डॉट इंडस्ट्री, बिकॉज इंडस्ट्री इज अ टेक्स्ट वैल्यू. इंडस्ट्री में जो वैल्यू होती है बैंकिंग, एग्रीकल्चर, ये सब टेक्स्ट होता है. तो जब भी आपको टेक्स्ट मिलता है ना, तो आपको दो चीजें चेक करें. इट इज नल, इफ इट इज नल, और या फिर एसीसी डॉट इंडस्ट्री empty or null, sorry, equals to double equals to is for comparison, one equals to is assignment of it. हल्की स्पेलिंग में दो एल आते, क्या? हाँ, दो एल आते. कभी कभी ना मैं छोटी छोटी चीजों को लेके कंफ्यूज हो जाता हूँ. सो यस, मोर स्टडी एंड मोर कंफ्यूजन. सो जब भी आप ऐसी कोई फील्ड चेक कर रहे हैं जो कि टेक्स्ट है, स्ट्रिंग है, तो आपने दोनों पॉसिबिलिटीज डालनी है. बिकॉज देखो स्ट्रिंग जो होती है, हालांकि इंडस्ट्री में नंबर नहीं आ सकता, बट इसका जो डेटा टाइप है, इंटरनल डेटा टाइप ऑफ इंडस्ट्री, ये पिक लिस्ट है. पिक लिस्ट का जो इंटरनल डेटा टाइप होता है वो स्ट्रिंग होता है. हम बात करते देखो व्हेन वी आर इनटू डेवलप, तो आप अभी उस साइड का जो डेटा टाइप्स आपने पढ़े हैं जब आप फील्ड्स क्रिएट करते हैं, उसको छोड़ दीजिए. when you are doing a development, you have to think like a developer all the time, all the time. और भाई हमारे हिसाब से तो डेटा टाइप दो ही होता है, प्रिमिटिव और एस ऑब्जेक्ट. प्रिमिटिव में ये सारी चीजें आ जाती हैं आपकी. प्रिमिटिव में आता है आपका इंटीजर, नंबर्स है ना, स्ट्रिंग्स आती हैं, डेट आता है, टाइम आता है, आईडीज. इवन एस ऑब्जेक्ट्स भी आते हैं. एस ऑब्जेक्ट इज अ सेपरेट थिंग दैट वी ऑलरेडी नो. इन द बैच प्रोग्राम आई टोल्ड यू कि एस ऑब्जेक्ट एक कॉमन कंटेनर है सारे ऑब्जेक्ट का. आप जब ऑब्जेक्ट बोलते हो दैट बिकम्स अ स्पेसिफिक ऑब्जेक्ट. जैसे अकाउंट लिखा मैंने यहाँ पे, अकाउंट, तो ये एक स्पेसिफिक ऑब्जेक्ट हो जाता है. इट्स अ प्रिमिटिव डेटा टाइप. लेकिन एस ऑब्जेक्ट अगर मैं लिख देता, सो दैट बिकम्स अ कॉमन कंटेनर फॉर एवरी ऑब्जेक्ट. ये फर्क होता है. एनीवेज, तो इंडस्ट्री इज अ पिक लिस्ट, और पिक लिस्ट का डेटा टाइप इंटरनली क्या होता है? स्ट्रिंग. सो वेन एवर यू आर डीलिंग विद एनी स्ट्रिंग फील्ड, तो ये दोनों कंडीशन चेक कर लिया करो. if it is equals to empty, double inverted comma is empty, or it is equals to null, because it could contain text as well as number. I'm not saying that industry is in any case it's going to have numbers, but I'll tell you one thing. Against this fact, let me produce you the evidences as well, right? Tell me one thing. I shall do this with any custom pick list. So I'll do this with candidate. So if you would go with candidate, click with inside in the candidate, we must have certain pick lists. So yes, if this is a pick list, right? If this is a pick list, candidate location. Now, presently, as you can see, location have all this text value, right? Presently, location have all these text. I guess I have make it restricted. Yes. So because it is restricted, you cannot see the new button. This is again a thing. All right. Remember, if the pick list is restricted, I guess we have dependencies implemented or what? I'm not sure. Why I make it restricted? I have to check it out. If the pick list is restricted, you simply cannot edit that. There must be either there is a dependency pick list I have implemented or something that I'll try with another object. Please. I'm just trying to show you one thing. Yeah. See, I'll go with this location. Yeah. Okay. So because these are the values which we have exported over there, that's the reason over inside in the candidate is supposed to be a restricted pick list, although, but here it is not. So see, this is right now having all this one. I am inserted just one, two. And if I would save this, don't you see these are there, right? So this proves, see, this is that evidence what I'm trying to say. Ki bhai, pick list might have string values, text values. It could also have numerical values. So string covers both of them. String जब आप data type बोल देते हो, तो string में आप text भी दे सकते हो, आप numbers भी दे सकते हो, even आप special symbols भी दे सकते हो. And see, this is the reason, whenever if you are evaluating for any string data type kind of field, जैसे pick list, text, a name is also text internally by the way. So उसमें आपने ये conditions को इस तरह से modify किया. Whereas अगर वो number है, सिर्फ number है, तो आप सिर्फ null रखो, ठीक है? देखते हैं आगे आता है नहीं, industry, फैक्स और वेबसाइट ये तीनों स्ट्रिंग है, तो सेकंड कंडीशन नहीं आएगी. लेकिन आगे देखते हैं प्रोग्रामिंग के दौरान कभी अगर मैं सिर्फ कोई ऐसी फील्ड उठाऊं जो कि इंटीजर है, इसमें सिर्फ नंबर है, तो फिर मैं ये वाली कंडीशन स्किप करूंगा. आई जस्ट चेक फॉर द नल, राइट? चलो, सो इफ इट इज नल, अब मुद्दे की बात करते हैं. अगर while inserting a new record, आप इंसर्ट कर रहे हैं एक रिकॉर्ड और ऐसे 10 रिकॉर्ड आप इंसर्ट कर रहे हैं, वो सारे 10 के 10 अभी कहाँ मौजूद हैं? All 10 of them are right now they are present inside trigger.new. So one by one, they are being iterated, they are being called for checking one by one. एक एक का नाम पुकारा जाएगा, चलो तुम आओ नंबर 1, नंबर 2, नंबर 3, and one by one, they would be getting stored inside in this local variable, and we are checking whether this record is having the value of industry. If not, if it is having, if this field is blank, let's say, if the value of industry is blank, or it is null, one and same thing. So I'll have to throw an error over here. I'll have to throw an error. So what I'm going to do, acc dot add error. Add error is one of the function. Add error is one of the function, right? Add error is one of the functions, just like this. Whatever has been written inside in the bracket is a function. Add error is a predefined function. You simply don't have to create it this by your own. You just have to use it, right? Add error. And I'll throw a message over here. I'll throw a message. Please select the value of industry. Right? Please select the value of industry. Similarly, now I'll just duplicate this for 3 others of them, right? The second time I wanted to check for the value of, I guess it is facts, right? So acc dot facts. Acc dot facts. If that facts value is empty, if it is null, so I'm going to put up an error called please give the value of facts. And secondly, I'll be checking for website, acc dot website. If the value of website is null or it is empty, that means it's not has been given. I'm going to throw an error called please select the value. Please select, or rather please give. Please give the value of industry. Please give or provide. I guess provide would be a better thing. Please provide or please give the value of website, right? Let me now save this code. ठीक है, चलो पहले इतना पोर्शन अपन ट्रिगर का टेस्ट करते हैं. We're having one error here. See to this what error we have. This is the error. गलत जगह पे कभी भी इंसान ने प्रेजेंट नहीं रहना. जिसको जहां बुलाया जाए उसने वहीं जाना चाहिए. Okay, so now, so acc.industry, acc.facts, acc.website. All good. Let me save this once again. And now let me see, once you save the code of a trigger, it becomes activated automatically. This is what you don't have to implicitly call the triggers. Like if you have created a class, what you do, you go to this execute anonymous window, and there you call that method. If it's in static boolean, you can call it directly. Otherwise, you first of all have to create a object of the class, and with reference to the object you call. So the classes, the methods, they need to be explicitly executed. But trigger, trigger is something else. Trigger does not require to be get called explicitly. It's going to be activated automatically. It's a very specialized kind of code. So I'll go with the count object. I'll try to, because this logic right now, I created this only on the insert, right? So I would be, creating an insert record. Before insert, it's going to test. So I'm going to write like account trigger test record number 1. And I'm not supplying the value of industry C for the facts and website. And what happens when I try to save it? It would immediately push me all these errors. It would immediately push me all these errors. Please review. Review the messages below. And this is that error message. Please give the value of website. Please give the value of website. All right. If you have observed one thing, this error right now is coming at the top of the page. I'm going to show you something more for this, but let me first of all give the value of website. Now, if I would give, it would ask me for the second. It has validated website first. And see, if you have this question in your mind, कि sir ये तो हमने तीसरे नंबर पे लिखा था, ये ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? So see, I have told you, we cannot control the execution of trigger. We cannot control the execution of trigger. Right? So it is going to check for these 3 fields, but in which order, that completely is unknown. We can just see for that. और जरूरी नहीं हर बार यही order follow करे. Second time हो सकता है वो facts पहले check कर ले, industry पहले check कर ले. All right. So I'm looking into one thing, that ये जो चीज है, the error is coming on the top of the page. It would be more appropriate, don't you think like this should be appear on the field level, so that एक ज्यादा visibility समझ में आ जाती थी कि yes, this field is blank, right? So if it is related, if the error is related to a particular field, I think it is more appropriate if we would display that over the field itself, isn't it? So I'm going to make a few changes in my code to obtain that. See, you have just added the error. Let me do one thing. acc.c, acc.industry.add error. What I did, I have given a position. I have given a position to add error. So if this error you wanted to display, this is that field where you have to display it, right? And let me show you this. acc.facts.error, acc.website.error. And let me now save this code. Let's come back over here, try to refresh this. I'll cancel this and open one separate transaction. I'll cancel this whole process. It's like account trigger test. Now I haven't supplied anything. See, so it has given, for these fields, you must have to supply the value. All right. For these fields, you must have to supply. So before insert is working absolutely fine. It is stopping us to save a record if I have not supplied the value for any one of what if you have given, it would allow us to store, right? It would allow us back. So this is what is a trigger for before insert. Like before insert, it is working absolutely correct, right? But what happen if I try to edit a record? Now, if I would try to edit a record, and this time I'm removing, let's say, facts, I'm also removing website, I'm keeping industry, and I'll try to save it. What happened? It has allowed you. And why this is happening? Actually, this is a discrepancies, but why this is happening? I mean, this is a known error to us. Why? Because for update, we haven't repeated the logic. We haven't written any logic. And that is why this is not getting applied if you are trying to update a record. But ideally, when you can think of this, I guess, and I'm sure you also understand, if you are making a field as required, it has to be required in both ways. If you are inserting a new record, that time it should have the same impression. Otherwise, if you are updating a field, I mean, if you're updating a record, sorry, even that time also, even that time also, this rule has to be get applied. So this is the reason I'm creating this, I'll have to check for the same thing. I'll have to make this field, all three of them, I'll have to make it required when you are inserting a new record and if you are updating a record that time as well. So there would be no other code. This is the same code, what you have to copy and paste it out over here as well. So if trigger dot is before and if it is update, that time also I wanted to check for the same thing. Because if you are inserting or if you are updating, I told you, thing goes to trigger dot new, record goes to trigger dot new. We'll have to iterate it from there as well, even if that is an insert operation or if it's an update operation. I'll have to check for the same logic. So I'm just saving this. And now let me come back over here. I'll refresh this interface once again. And now see, I'll try to edit this, right? And I'll try to save it. See, now it has been applied. Now this has been applied. So even after updation, if when you're trying to update this, if you would not going to supply the value of these fields, it is going to throw you the error while you are inserting a new record, or else if you are making updation in the existing record. So in both events, this trigger is going to be get applied and it will do whatever it's doing, right? Well, that is what is a trigger looks like to be. And this is how you write down the triggers. All right. This is how you write down the triggers. Now, this was simple to understand. This was simple to understand. I hope you guys are agree with this fact. This was simple to understand because we have splitted this into two separate events and accordingly we have coded, right? But don't you think that this is not a good program? And why it is not a good program? Because see, in both of the cases, if you are, if the event is insert, before insert, or else if the event is before update, business logic is same. The business logic is same. But if you are maintaining this into two separate blocks, this means you are increasing the length of this program, the number of lines of the program. By the way, the number of lines cannot go beyond 1 lakh. There is a governor limit. I'm not talking about a single program in this. No single program have 1 lakh lines. Don't make yourself fool. All right. If I'm saying to you that there is a governor limit about number of lines of the code, this means all of the program that you have created inside in your organization, all classes, all triggers, all APIs, you are presently using 0.54%. 0.54%. There is a governor limit for every program, including all programs, all triggers, all APIs, what you have written. They cannot go beyond 1 lakh lines of the code and beyond 60 lakh characters. Presently, you are using 32,509 characters, including Apex. Excluded test class, we're going to come. सो सी दिस इज, ये याद रखो, एक्सक्लूडेड कमेंट्स, कमेंट को इंक्लूड नहीं होती यहाँ पे। जैसे इफ आई हैव रिटन सर्टेन कमेंट, जैसे मैंने ये कमेंट आउट किया है, दिस इज नॉट काउंटेड इन अ नॉर्मल प्रोग्राम, कमेंट्स आर नॉट काउंटेड। एट द सेम टाइम द एट द रेट टेस्ट क्लासेस आर नॉट काउंटेड फॉर दिस। तो ये जो गवर्नर लिमिट हमको दिखाई दे रही है, वेयर in your organization, out of an allowed limit is 60 lakh, once 10 100,000 10,000 lakh 10 lakh 60 lakh, or in terms of American, it is once 10 100,000 10,000 100,000 6 million. So it cannot go beyond 6 million characters or 60 lakh characters. 1 million is 10 lakh, by the way. So 6 million would be 60 lakh or 1 lakh lines of the code. So including every program, every triggered, every Apex class, APIs, whatever you have written, you cannot go beyond 1 lakh line. Now, what do you think? अरे जितना बढ़ाना बढ़ा दो ना, 1 लाख बहुत होता है. Don't think like that. In some cases, there are some of, like I'll take the example of IDFC Bank. IDFC was the biggest project of my life. First thing, it was entirely on communication. That was the first time when I started learning what does it means by digital experiences in sales. It was a highly complicated project. Finance is always, especially the banking is a sector that runs for 24 by 7. 24 by 7, there are certain services in our life, what we see, that runs 24 by 7. Finance is one of them, banking is one of them. So IDFC was one of my biggest projects for which I have worked. There were so many classes, and believe me, that time, the governor limit has been crossed. That was my first time when I have seen this. The governor limit has been crossed. 1 lakh lines of the code that has been crossed. And this was a very big blunder. You won't believe. In any case, Salesforce not allow you to bypass the governor limit. No, nobody is allowed. Even if the president of United States would write a code, even he has to follow the same rule. He is even not allowed to go beyond the governor limit. They are very rigid rules. Yeah, they are very rigid. So we have identified almost 10,000 classes that time that were very lengthy. The number of lines of the code was very high. It was a very big figure. So that it has been distributed entirely to the whole IDFC team. There were more than 500 developers, more than, I guess, 100 team leads and account managers. Everybody was working. So it was being distributed among the team of all developers. Maybe you have written that code or not, but you have to optimize. We have to optimize. We have to do this, and this is a very urgent issue. So every one of us has worked for days and night for almost 3 to 4 months and to reduce that code. And it was all happening because, there were simple things, guys, but people don't used to follow the best practices. That was the reason. See, I can even kept you like this. My part, while teaching you something, everybody wanted to try to make the logic as simple as possible, so that कल चल के तुम बोलो कि ट्रिगर कितना भारी चीज था, हमको तो बहुत अच्छे से पढ़ा दिया यार उन्होंने. They made it very simple for us to understand. लेकिन अगर मैं यहाँ लाके तुमको छोड़ दूं, तो आगे चल के तुम यही गलती करते हो, which I don't want it. तो अब हम थोड़ी सी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज को बढ़ाएंगे, बट अंडरस्टैंड दिस इज अ बिटर ट्रूथ ऑफ लाइफ. डेवलपर बनने जा रहे हो, बिना कॉम्प्लिकेटेड चीजों को देखने या बनाने के आप अपनी जिंदगी को अज्यूम नहीं कर सकते. यू हैव, दिस इज अ पार्ट ऑफ आर, ये एक ट्रूथ है, इट्स अ बिटर ट्रूथ ऑफ आवर लाइफ, कि हमको चीजों को कॉम्प्लिकेटेड करना पड़ता है. वी कैन नॉट मेक एवरीथिंग सिंपल. आई कैन नॉट मेक एवरी वन ऑफ यू हैप्पी, राइट? तो आप समझो, जिस जिस दौर पे अभी मैं हूँ, उस दौर पे आप ही आने वाले, तो हमको करना ही है हमको ये. So now we'll have to optimize this. Although this seems to be very simple code, very readable code, very user friendly code, सब कुछ बहुत अच्छा है, बहुत सुंदर है ये. प्रॉब्लम है कि ज्यादा लाइन ले रहा है. ऐसी चीजें हम लोग नहीं बताते, राइट? सो नाउ आई वुड बी गोइंग टू मिनिमाइज दिस. कैसे? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल ये पूरा पार्टी हटा देता हूँ, ठीक है? ये पूरा पार्ट ही हटा दिया, सेकेंड पार्ट पूरा हटा दिया, बिकॉज आई नो दैट इज द सेम बिजनेस लॉजिक विच इज गेटिंग अप्लाइड यहाँ पे। ये है वो बिजनेस लॉजिक, है ना, ये है वो बिजनेस लॉजिक जो दोनों जगह इस्तेमाल हो रहा था। दिस इज दैट बिजनेस लॉजिक, ये है भाई। इसी को हमने दो जगह लिख रखा है। तो हम एक काम करते हैं कि हम इस कोड को ऑप्टिमाइज करते हैं किस तरह से। राइट नाउ भाई दिस इज ओनली गेटिंग चेक फॉर, ये बिजनेस लॉजिक बिफोर इंसर्ट का अलग बना रखा था और बिफोर अपडेट का अलग बना। अब देखो मैं क्या करूँ, आई एम गोइंग टू ऑप्टिमाइज दिस। बहुत छोटा सा मॉडिफिकेशन है, यू नो, बहुत छोटा सा। अगर मैं आपसे एक क्वेश्चन पूछूं, एक नॉर्मल अलजेब्रा, एक नॉर्मल अलजेब्रा, एक नॉर्मल जो आपने मैथमेटिक्स पढ़ा हो, जिसमें हम लोग इक्वेशंस को सॉल्व करते हैं, वी ट्राई टू सिंप्लीफाई द इक्वेशन बाय फाइंडिंग आउट द कॉमन्स इन बिटवीन। आप मुझे एक बात बताओ, सिंपल सी बात, बिफोर इंसर्ट और बिफोर अपडेट को देखते हुए अगर आपको क्या कॉमन नजर आ रहा है, कोई फ्रेज है यहाँ पे जो आपको कॉमन नजर आ रही है?
बिफोर।
एग्जैक्टली exactly, बिल्कुल सही। बिफोर इंसर्ट और बिफोर में कॉमन क्या है? बिफोर। तो मैंने ट्रिगर डॉट इज बिफोर को ना कॉमन निकाल लिया, जैसा हम पढ़ा करते थे। उसके बाद में आई ओपन इन ब्रैकेट ओपन किया, ठीक है, मैं एक ब्रैकेट बना, ट्रिगर डॉट इज बिफोर। बिफोर के लिए क्या यूज होता है? इज बिफोर। इंसर्ट के लिए इज इंसर्ट, अपडेट के लिए इज अपडेट, ठीक है। आई मेक है, ये और है आपका, और ट्रिगर डॉट इज बिफोर, डॉट लगाना चाहिए था, कॉमा, ट्रिगर डॉट इज बिफोर, बस इतना सा मॉडिफिकेशन। क्या किया मैंने? ट्रिगर डॉट इज बिफोर को कॉमन निकालिए, एंड ट्रिगर डॉट इज इंसर्ट और इज बिफोर। अब ध्यान से सुनिए, मान के चलिए, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लेट मी सेव दिस। मान के चलिए इंसर्ट ऑपरेशन आता है, मतलब यू आर ट्राइंग टू इंसर्ट अ न्यू रिकॉर्ड, राइट। आप जाते हैं अकाउंट ऑब्जेक्ट में, कोई भी चला जाता है अकाउंट ऑब्जेक्ट में, एंड दे आर ट्राइंग टू इंसर्ट अ न्यू रिकॉर्ड। अब आप न्यू इंसर्ट कर जाते हैं, जैसे ही आपने न्यू बटन प्रेस कर दिया, बैकएंड में आपका ट्रिगर एक्टिवेटेड है, ट्रैक करना शुरू कर दिया। सो व्हेन यू आर ट्राइंग टू इंसर्ट अ न्यू रिकॉर्ड, ठीक है, and you're trying to insert a new record and you try to save it, immediately it has fired। बोला कि नहीं, कैसे हुआ? ट्रिगर डॉट इज बिफोर, क्या ये बिफोर इंसर्ट है? यस ऑफ कोर्स। एंड क्या ये इंसर्ट है? यस। और क्या था बिफोर? तो ये और के साथ लगाया, मतलब ये पार्ट छूट जाएगा आपका। तो अब ये कंडीशन और ये कंडीशन लग जाती है, तो ये कंडीशन क्या बनती है? ट्रिगर डॉट इज बिफोर एंड ट्रिगर डॉट इज इंसर्ट, ये कंडीशन सेटिस्फाई होती है। ये सेटिस्फाई होती है, आपको बिजनेस लॉजिक एग्जीक्यूट। सेकेंड, अभी मैं इंसर्ट तो नहीं कर रहा, बट आई एम ट्राइंग टू अपडेट समथिंग, ठीक है, आई एम ट्राइंग टू एडिट समथिंग। तो मैं एडिट करता हूँ, आई ट्राई टू एडिट समथिंग, एंड व्हेन आई ट्राई टू एडिट दिस, सेम थिंग हैपेंस। तो जब मैं एडिट कर रहा हूँ तब क्या होता है? ट्रिगर डॉट इज बिफोर, क्या ये बिफोर है? यस ऑफ कोर्स। एंड ऑपरेशन क्या है? क्या ये इंसर्ट है? नहीं। और क्या ये बिफोर है? यस। तो अब ये इस बिफोर के साथ क्या लग जाता है आपका? इस बिफोर के साथ, इस बिफोर के साथ इस अपडेट लगाना चाहिए था मुझे, इस अपडेट, ठीक है। इस बिफोर के साथ क्या लगता है? इस अपडेट, ठीक है। एंड दस दस फिर ये सेम बिजनेस लॉजिक, यू नो, द सेम बिजनेस लॉजिक व्हिच वी हैव रिटन इज गेटिंग अप्लाइड फॉर बिफोर अपडेट एंड बिफोर। So this is how, you know, this is how you optimize the code. This is how you reduce the number of lines of the code, and this has to be done because there is a governor. And don't think like कि कोई एक प्रोग्राम की 1 लाख या 60,000, 60 लाख कैरेक्टर्स कैसे हो सकती है? वो तो पॉसिबल ही नहीं। मैंने तो मेरी जिंदगी में इतना बड़ा प्रोग्राम आज तक नहीं देखा। क्यों नहीं देखा? अरे यार, हम लोग ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्राम, हाई लेवल प्रोग्राम, वैसे कितनी सारी चीजें तो ऑटोमेटिकली बैकएंड में चली रही हैं। अब बताओ, ऐड एरर आपने किया तो क्या आपने ऐड एरर का फंक्शन लिखा क्या? आपने सिर्फ फंक्शन यूज किया है। अब वो फंक्शन की डेफिनेशन कहाँ पर है? बैकएंड में है। आपने जो कुछ भी यहाँ पे यूज किया, तो वो फंक्शन जैसे आपने ऐड एरर यूज किया, अब ये फंक्शनैलिटी रेडीमेड फंक्शनैलिटी। और एपेक्स इसी तरह का, एपेक्स में मैक्सिमम चीज तो रेडीमेड है। जब सारी रेडीमेड चीज हम यूज करने वाले हैं, तो वैसे ही हमारा नंबर ऑफ लाइंस ऑफ कोड इतना आगे नहीं जा सकता। सिर्फ हमारी ही गलतियां होती हैं कि हम ऑप्टिमाइज तरीके से नहीं लिखते हैं। तो इसलिए ये चीजें याद रखना, ठीक है। सो दिस इज लाइक हाउ वी आर गोइंग टू, एंड बाय द वे, this is called as process of bulkification। कल या परसों जब भी हमने बात करी तो I told you there are several best practices that needs to be get followed every time when you are writing a trigger. So one of them is trigger should always be a bulkified trigger. That means it should be get applied to bulk amount of records. At the same time, if there are business logic, that is exactly same by using trigger context variables and for loop. If somebody would ask you like, how you have gained this bulkification, you are telling me that trigger should always be a bulkified trigger. I'm agree, but you tell me how would you gain this? How would you make a trigger to be looks like to be a bulkified? There are two things. By using a trigger context variable, we combine the conditions and by using for loop. So these are the two spatial entities. These are the two required entities by which you could make a trigger looks like to be a bulkified trigger. All right. So that's how that's how we are going to write triggers. Yes, that's all for today. Take this example, try to write it down by understanding every step of this. And tomorrow, we're going to take a new program. That's all for today. You have any questions, please go ahead and ask. Any questions? Yes, guys, any questions? All right, then if you don't have anything to ask, we are good to stop for now. Thank you so much for joining. Have a nice day.